and get going. Mm. I never know how to start these things. Who's got some questions? Who's got something they want to talk about?
I don't mind talking for a bit. I don't exactly know what I want to talk about, Vince, but like I was saying, I'm doing a retreat at the minute, and it's useful because you get a lot of time to just think or feel the subtleties of what you're feeling. You know what's going on in the body, what emotions are there. And I had prepared a question for the retreat to ask, and we had talked about it in a different way the last time, I think a little bit. But what was useful was when I asked the question here, just sitting on retreat, you take the time to see how you feel about the question, and the sense of embarrassment came up, the sense of self consciousness, and kind of feeling afraid, and then even asking the question, like, the arrogance, the humiliation, who do you think you are? So I've just been kind of spending time sitting with questions that have juice for me, and dropping into what's underneath them. And the way I'm describing it is, it's like what's giving them that energy or that juice or that stickiness, and it's those emotions. So it feels like the work is to just keep deepening into those emotions and just seeing what's there and what comes up, and
Yep, yep, yep.
maybe without necessarily an expectation of something.
Mm, that
Uh,
sounds good. Yep.
I, I think the whole retreat is for me was more about kind of, you hear so many, and I think you talked about it last week when we were talking. I can't remember exactly what we were saying, but this whole idea of a retreat or an awakening being a big bang thing, and a big honeymoon, and then at some point there's shadow work to be done, and it may not be like that for everybody, and it feels like it may be more subtle and simple and longer and slow burning in a sense for me, with various different glimpses and shifts and experiences over my lifetime when I can remember them. Um, and that the clarity is very slow to kind of, there's clarity, there's more clarity, but it's not, oh, I had a big awakening and then I had 6 months honeymoon. And so wrangling with all that in the kind of what I've been dealing with on the retreat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it came to me what we were talking about last time about the fact that you might be already awake. And
That was the question. It's like it's something that's been bothering me for a while. And you'll see teachers talk to people and they'll say, oh, you seem pretty, clear, or you're on the, you can tell there's an acknowledgement of, let's call it awakening or kensho, or clarity. And so with me, it's like, well, I had shifts, I had experiences, I had things that, you know, the center fell away. There was no me. I had experiences of the sense of me being miles away, and like God looking out your eyes, and it was terrifying and exciting. All these little things, and there's others, and just over the years, expansiveness. And but working with my guide, it's very much, there's a lot of doubt.
mm,
And I think the truest thing I can say, and I said it on retreat, is I still feel like me, but I can't find me when I look.
yep, 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 yep.
And so I don't know how to, and that's just a fact for me now. And my sense is just keep doing the work I've described, the emotions, the
Keep
sensations,
keep
the
looking to the
feeling.
future for something, eh?
Yeah, I'm not looking to the. Well, yeah, that was my concern with the question that I seek someone else's idea or my idea of what an awakening should be and disregard what's already here
Yeah, yeah.
and spend your whole life doing that and then realize, God, it just does this real forsakenness about it, a sense of, loss of life to do that.
Mm,
So it's like I'm checking with people. Could I be? Am I? Maybe? Am I? I don't know. You start to
yeah,
shite.
yeah. Okay. There are a few indications of oh, it's impossible to talk about awakening, from this side of the gate. It's easily seen that awakening is just nothing. It's bullshit. It doesn't exist, right? But from the other side, from the side that you imagine you are, of course, there's always seeking to get somewhere. Yeah. Look, look. Let's do a bit of work on me for a second, just to put things into perspective for you. It was today is Saturday, so what was it yesterday? The day before, anyway, it was recently, the day before yesterday, I think it was, or maybe even no, it was yesterday. It was yesterday. Anyway, I um I was at my son's a house that my son owns, and we were preparing it for the next tenant. The previous tenants had made a mess of it. Okay, so there was a lot of work to do there. So my wife and I were over there helping my son and daughter-in-law clean it up and paint it and get things ready. And okay, and I had just finished a stint on the carpet cleaner, and I was out at the back of my car cleaning the carpet cleaner, and because that's a duplex, there's two houses joined together with a common entranceway, and then the driveway divides and goes into my son's place and into next door. And they had parked their car in my son's driveway. My son parked his car there, and so I just parked in my neighbour's driveway, in his neighbour's driveway, who I thought was away overseas, and their father was there looking after the dogs, and I'd spoken to him, and he was quite happy for me to park in the driveway. Anyway, I just parked in the driveway, and there I was cleaning up the carpet cleaner, and this woman comes out and says, "Could you move your car, please?" And I went, "Oh yeah, sure, no worries." I thought I was a bit surprised that she was back, um, but anyway, and of course I'm happy to move my car because she asked me to. So I moved my car, and then I'm waiting for her garage to open for her to drive out, and nothing happened. It didn't. She didn't, and stories formed. Stories came along that said she asked me to move my car simply because I was in her driveway, not because she wanted to get out, not for any other reason, that I was in her space. And I felt some annoyance about that. I thought, what a bitch. That's not good neighbour relations. Here she is doing that. But I saw it happen. I saw myself get a little emotional about this, a little bit upset about the fact that she asked me to drive simply because it was her space I was in. Does that mean I'm not awakened? I responded to a story. I got emotional a little. I saw it happen, but there it was. And it's still a little bit, when I tell you this story now, I still feel a little bit annoyed at this woman for being so possessive about a space. Uh, and I felt glad that I wasn't her, or that she wasn't my neighbour to be like that. I even had a thought that it would serve her right if she got neighbours for hell as the new tenants in that place. You see what I was
Yeah,
getting at? Here's me being very, very human. Does it mean I'm not awake?
yeah. It points right at our assumptions, our beliefs about what awakening is and what it'll be like when you're awake, based
exactly.
on
Yeah.
watching different people over the years.
So what it told me was that there's still some identification there, right? There is still there's a bit of juice there. There's something for me to work on. Uh, I'm not worried about working on it. I'm not going to work on it in particular. Well, I'm working on it now by talking about it, and I'm aware that now. So if it was to come up again, I would go, okay, maybe there's something a bit deeper I need to look at. Maybe there's a bit of shadow work there, something like that. But on the surface, I don't think so. My intuition tells me it was just something that got triggered that hadn't been triggered before. And so consequently, I just realized that there's a remnant. Now, maybe this will be enough, looking at it will be enough for it never to come back. Maybe not. We'll see. We can only tell in time whether something like that happens. It did not bring up any doubt for me. Not a single skerrick of doubt.
Yeah, well, it feels like when people say this is endless, even after awakening or liberation, or people like Aggie would say that, this work never, it deepens and deepens and deepens and deepens. That sounds to me like that's just an opportunity to deepen, and they're endless in life until,
I,
till you're dead.
I, yeah, I believe, I agree with that. I wonder if it'll ever be, if there is any end, if I'll ever get to an end. I don't know. But so I recognize that if I was to step back and see it, I recognize that the whole thing was rather ridiculous. But if I step outside of that and look at just what it might indicate, and I don't know, it just might indicate that there's still something there to look at. This kind of thing happens to me and in various circumstances. Usually I can thank my wife for triggering stuff. She's really good at that. Or rather, it's it happens, you
She's your
know.
teacher.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, and it probably happens to me, I don't know, once a month. It's like a version of it, something along the lines, or I'll get. Usually, it brings up a little bit of anger with her, but there it is, and that was my big, big, big one before awakening. I used to get frustrated, and then that would turn into anger every day, and more than once a day sometimes. That was a huge thing, and that hardly ever happens now, but it still does happen. It's usually very short-lived. It's often quite intense, but very, very short-lived.
But can I say something?
Yes, of course.
Isn't the awakening part in this story whether or not you are able to create space for whatever happens? So if you were to have that experience with the next door neighbor, and then judge yourself for your reaction for not being awake, that would be not being awake but you created space for it, and that's it.
Yeah. I didn't do anything. That's just what
No,
happened,
no.
though. Yes, yeah.
I know you didn't do anything, but the
Mm.
opposite of not doing anything would be to judge yourself for having a reaction.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine it's necessary to get angry or, have emotions and feelings. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist. It's healthy or it's normal versus, every single time everyone talks to you or anything happens and you're flying off the handle, then okay, this isn't normal. Whereas maybe that was more normal. This idea that a spiritually awake person would just, float by the car and pull it away and just float on with their life. I am Zen. That's just waffle. I imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. When she first asked me to move, I was really happy to move, I really was, like, sure, no worries, it was good. It was only after it appeared that there was no reason other than her what I imagined was her possessiveness. I could be totally wrong about that. And I did judge her. There was that to it as well. You know, that's probably where there's more juice than anything, because judging her, of course, is a projection. You know, but yeah, well, we won't spend the night working on me, but there you go. That's what I'm saying is, you know, there is awakening is not awakening is not, it's the same thing, you know. It's like, remember the story, did I tell you the story about stories and how we see ourselves? You don't
I
remember
remember.
that? No, okay. I'll give it to you again, and it's kind of like it comes into play at a certain point. So, okay, once we reach, and I suspect it is relevant to you, and that is that everything is based on stories. We, as humans, that's what we do. We tell stories, we respond to stories, and we have that response to stories creates more stories, right? So that's all experiencing, of course. But so what we do is we wake up in the morning and a story appears and we respond to that, and then that creates more stories and we respond to that, and this goes on all day, every day. This is the nature of being human, right? That's simplistic, of course, but that's the way I see it. So it's stories all the way down. Now, if you've got a story that says you're not awake, you're going to see the world in a particular perspective. You know, you're going to frame it from the perspective of not being awake. If you've got a story that you are awake, then you're going to see everything from that perspective. And that will give you an entirely different experience. Everything that you're responding to, you will respond to differently if you come from the perspective of having a story that you are awake than if you have a story that you're not awake. And so that's why doubt is important, to get beyond doubt. We need to get to the point where you see the world from the perspective of being awake. And then you will experience being awake. And then you'll realize, of course, that being awake is just a different perspective on life. That's all it is, a different perspective. And consequently, different experience. You respond differently.
Yeah, when you said that, my initial reaction was, I'd prefer to have the story I'm not awake than to go around with the story I am awake. That seems more arrogant or more deluded. It seems like the truth would be neither of those.
That's true. That
Um,
is true, yeah.
and it feels like the doubt, and Kogan said this to me on the retreat, because there is a lot of doubt, but the doubt can kind of be a friend to kind of keep you honest, so you're not jumping onto YouTube and proclaiming, you know some stuff, that it's a real kind of guide to deep and fully, and at the
Yep.
first insight, not running off going, "Hey, I know stuff." Um,
Yeah, I hear what you say. And it doesn't ring true for me in one way. I can imagine that that could be the case for some people. But if you are awake, arrogance is not something that you'll have. That just isn't there, you know. Superiority is not there. There is no. You don't. Well, I don't imagine that I'm better than other people. I mean, it's a crazy notion even to think about what's better than.
yeah, I definitely don't imagine that, or I don't feel that. But I think one of the issues I'm dealing with is that sort of core wound of sort of, and it's come up before, even in kind of talk therapy. I'm no good. That's at the root of some of the kind of
But that's
most deep
obviously a
feelings.
belief. You know that you can see that that's just a belief, can't you?
It is a, yeah, it's words, it's a belief, but it has gravitas it has. There's
Yeah, I
emotion
get that.
attached to
I
it.
get
There's
that. And
sadness.
you might even have experience in or memory of experience that will validate that. But it is still a belief. It is
Yeah,
still the story that shapes the way you respond to things.
and it's like you're operating from it unconsciously. It's like when you're younger, you took yourself to be, well, I'm no good, I'm not lovable, and therefore I operate in the world in a way that's, people pleasing, and you forget that that's at the core of it. And
Mm.
that's, I suppose, the work I'm doing now, trying to get back to the core of my core beliefs, my core
Okay.
feelings, my core
Yeah, yeah.
wound, to
And
feel those things.
that may be appropriate or it may not. It may just be your excuse, so to speak.
That's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I see that too, Vince. Yeah.
yeah.
But
The
then that
the
can be seen as bypassing too, by going,
oh
well, I
yeah,
don't need
yeah.
to do
We
anything.
don't want that. That's for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. So to say I'm awake and not believe it, to fake it is not appropriate. That's not going to get you anywhere. It might reveal something, but yeah, you would do that inwardly rather than outwardly, so to speak. Um, but yeah, look, so it's a bit of a trick here. The stuff that we imagine is inside us that we need to get out in order to heal. That's just one story. There, it may be that that's the case, that there is some shadow work there that shapes things in a way at an unconscious level that makes it impossible to move beyond until something happens to collapse that. But it also may be the case that simply recognizing that that exists is enough to collapse it. Right? And you don't have to see details of it. You don't have to dig it out and shine the torch on every little crevice and corner of that scenario. You simply recognize that there is some, I don't want to call it conditioning, but but it may be, but there is some something that shaped your view of yourself from your past that exists in the present. Right? So it doesn't exist in the past anymore. That's all finished and gone. Right? It exists in the present. Now recognizing that that's there sucks the juice out of it. It doesn't need intense examination necessarily. It might do, but there's a good chance it might not as well. It's really weird what people imagine about things like waking up, because it's so hard to define. Well, it's indefinable, undefinable. You can't define it. Right? So what people imagine all sorts of things about it, and they have a pretty high bar sometimes about getting there. Okay, so what if we said 2/3 of you can be awake and 1/3 of you isn't? And that 1/3 of you is got some work to do, and the other 2/3 can run around and be quite awake, no problems at all. That's a different way of looking at it, isn't it? So everybody thinks it's either all or nothing. It's not that way at
Yeah,
all. Yeah.
that feels more pragmatic or practical. But when you said that thing about what's here with you now, that when you don't look at it sucking the juice out of you, that's what it feels like. But when you look at it, you take its juice away. And straight away, kind of in the heart area, was a real sense of shame. And it's like, that's what's with me
Mm,
all the time.
right. But
And
that's not a thing, is it? That shame. Well, it's really important to appreciate that shame isn't a concrete noun. Like
No,
shame
you're
is
right. It's a
simply a
feeling.
concept that describes something, and it describes it in a really gross way. If we look at it in more detail, then we can't really describe it because it's way too subtle and too complex to be described. So to say it's shame, but I get the feeling, I get what you're saying, that there's that shame there, right? Okay, so if you ask yourself now, right now, are you a shameful person right now? Not about the past, not about what you have experienced before, but right now, in this moment, in this instant, here, right now, sitting here talking to us, are you a shameful person? Not what's inside you, what you're experiencing now.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer. The urge was to answer yes, but then when you said, look at your experience now, I feel like saying I'm just here.
Mm,
There's a feeling, and when I feel it, it's not, forget shame, forget that's a label. It's a feeling of energy, of movement, of, and when it keeps popping back to the head, the next thought is it's love, it's sadness. Well, it's just an emotion. It's a feeling in the heart area. It's an energy. It wants to move.
mm,
So that's kind of,
yes. So you tap into the complexity of it, eh? Yeah.
there's an aliveness to it.
Mm. So if you were to look for shame, without doubt, I imagine you would be going for stories of something to be ashamed of. Even without defining what that something is, shame has got to be about a story that you tell yourself.
Yeah, I have the story. I know the story. Yeah.
Mm, mm. And does that story apply to you now, or is it something from the past?
Oh, yeah. It feels very, when you were very young and, a child
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
felt shame for, yeah. So it's the past.
yeah. So with it, so no, I have no problems saying that. Okay, there was a young Dennis who was ashamed of something, and he had stories that made him feel ashamed. That's a young Dennis. That's not you now.
Mm. Yeah.
And there is no actual time. You only have memories of a young Dennis. It's like you've there's not a cell in your body that's the same as the young Dennis that was ashamed. You've completely changed, and you just have a memory of being ashamed then, and somehow you want to bring that into the present and experience it again. And you want to do that, I imagine, because you want to not feel that. But you don't have to feel that. That belongs to another person, another time, not you now.
Yeah. Labeling it that way feels like a way of not feeling it.
Mm,
Like when you say shame, it's like oh, shame. I'm just stopping. But when you don't say shame and you just feel it, it's like shame is just a little bell going, look here. And
mm,
looking here, it just does feel like an energy, a movement. Can feel it rising up through the neck and into the face. And
Mm-hmm.
in the heart area. It's just it's an energy, and I have to be careful not to build more stories around that, but
Mm-hmm.
just to
Yeah.
feel it.
They come pretty easily, those extra stories, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe it'll release and I'll have some big shift. That's just a story. So straight away I'm out of it now, back into stories.
Mm. Yeah. And it's complex stuff. I mean, when you had the story about, yeah, you had the story of what what the experience was that you feel ashamed about, but then you had another story about what that means. And so there's two stories. And if we look at it closer, we'll find a whole lot of other stories also attached to that same thing. What will they think of me? Are you okay about that? Somebody being around you while you talk about this?
Oh yeah, no, that was just it's fine now. Yeah, um, yeah, I'm good.
Mm.
Yeah, but they're very yeah, you're right. They're connected. That's sort of core shame and I'm no good. They're the two that seem to be the juiciest of the core
Mm.
of things.
But the I'm no good stuff belongs in the past too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels like it was formed very young.
Mm. So you must have worked hard all your life to keep these things alive. We have to repeat stories again and again and again to keep them alive.
Yeah, I was expecting you to say I had to work hard to suppress, but you've actually said the opposite. I've been carrying them along as my friends for years, and why have I been doing that? Yeah, because they're me. Who am I without my stories?
You're not you without your stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm very
That's yeah, go on.
no. I was just going to say, and I'm very conscious not to conclude. Okay, so the thing to do now is to drop my stories. That's just another story.
You can't do that, can you? You just they'll drop, but yeah, no, you can't do it, no matter how, I keep coming back to that wonderful koan that occurred to me about how do you do not doing? Because the only way your stories will drop is not with any doing, no effort required. Yet, yet every part of us screams, I need to do it. I need to drop my stories like it's something you can actually do. But if stories are there, that's what they are. They're stories. But it's an amazing thing that we can. I had to formulate I got taken by somebody on Liberation Unleashed Facebook today, and they were talking about the trouble they were having with their guide, that they could not get out of the idea, the thoughts. The thoughts were what got them, and I was able to. It just came to me as I was responding to them that there are two ways to um, how can I put it, associate with thought. Uh, and one of them is you can respond to what the thought is about, and that's a rabbit hole that'll take you off forever and ever and ever, and of course spins out into a whole lot of other stories. Or you can
Hmm.
step out of what the story's about and look at the fact that the thought exists, the story exists. Right? So not being inside it and living out the content, but rather being outside of it and watching it happen. And when you do that, your perspective has just grown really, really big, because you also not only see that the story exists, but you see the context of it. You see the conditions that are surrounded, the circumstances that stimulated it, and what it rests on. Um, yeah.
So
Yeah,
It's funny when you
sure.
said that. When you said that, Vince, I just kind of, well, I want to question this. I realized that when and I just said it a couple of times, when I have a thought that I use the thought to look below the thought. But it feels like now that's also a story. Get a thought, look below it, feel the feelings. That's another story I'm telling myself. So I have more work I'm doing,
Mm.
following another story. It feels very subtle.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, and they're very seductive. They are for sure. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, yeah. So the
So I'm kind of
idea,
questioning now, should I do that practice or just say that's another story? Like just notice that it's a story.
yeah. So how do you do not doing? Don't do the practice. But if it happens, fine. But don't do it. See, here's a big one. Here's the thing that the wow, I've got a million miles an hour going in my head. The thing that woke me up was being the recognition when somebody told me that I can't be awake and be a seeker at the same time. They are mutually exclusive. I have to stop being a seeker in order to wake up. And for me, that just stimulated an epiphany where I went, of course, that is so logical. So what that means is my only option is to totally accept whatever it is that I experience. That anything that I become aware of, any experience that I become aware of is already finished by the time I become aware of it. And so any idea of wanting it to be different is just going to contaminate the next experience. So the best way I can be is to just watch what turns up without an opinion, without any ideas about wanting it to be different, whatever it is. And if that's thought, if that's a story, if that's that, but notice it, I'm watching it. I'm not in it, I'm watching it. Kind of part of me is in
Yeah.
it, of course. I'm still going to get carried along by what stories come up. And in fact, watching it is also a story, but it's a useful story, kind of, as a way of looking at it. So stop seeking. Stop saying, will I do this to wake up? There, because you're in fantasy land. You're going, maybe one day I'll wake up. Maybe if I do this, I'll get closer. Maybe. Always about the future. Get into the present as close as you can to the present, and that'll be 5 milliseconds behind the present, because your awareness is always going to lag what actually happens by less
Mm.
than a second, by a couple of hundredths of a second maybe, but it's going to lag it. So no point in wanting it to be different. Let's just accept. And how do we accept? Well, we don't do it. We just recognize that it's futile to do anything other than accept.
It's already here, yeah. Acceptance
Yeah,
is already
it's
here.
beautiful. It is.
Yeah.
And that brings a wonderful sweetness to everything. It's like as close as you can get to the idea of flowing is just to watch. And you don't have to watch. I mean, it's just one way of saying something that if it happens, it happens. Whatever happens, it's just happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, I didn't fight my experience that came up with the lady next to my son's house. I didn't say that shouldn't have happened. I thought it was rather curious that it did happen, but I'm not saying no, and I'm certainly not blaming her for what I experienced. It was all me. But it's just there is just such a wonderful sweetness in allowing the past to stay in the past, because it is just a memory. And if it's shadow work that needs working, then it's a cellular memory, a muscle memory, a body memory, more so than a intellectual memory. But still, it's a memory, and we are affected by it. But we don't have to live it out. We can be outside of it and watch it happening.
Thanks, Vince.
Yeah. Remember I jokingly said last time that I expect you to come back to this meeting awake?
I don't remember that, thankfully.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I want you to watch the things that come up that tell you you're not awake. Don't have an opinion about them. Just watch what turns up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll send you an invitation to that Facebook group, Sylvia. No worries.
I feel like saying something to Dennis, although Vince might have said it since I came a bit late. I didn't hear the beginning. But, I just feel like saying that, imagining somebody who is awake is artificial, because there is not a somebody who is awake. You, Dennis, will never be awake. I could say this, because it's not Dennis who is going to be awake. Either there is awakeness in some moments manifesting because it's not filtered, it's just direct perceiving without any comments or judgments, or without any movement of thought that wants to make it my own. Or there is what people call not being awake, because there is experience and immediate comment and filtering. Almost synchronically, you're living it, and in the mind you are like taking an opinion, a viewpoint, a comment, or whatever. So either it's this or it's that. So there is no Dennis that is going to be awake. So it's the same. Maybe Vince said it at the beginning. I wasn't here, but it's the same as the same as Vince is saying. At some point, you might be recognizing, like, it's just life flowing. It's just flowing. There's no comment. There's no interference. There's no judgment. Not even with shame, or what mind used to call shame. So, and then at some point you might like, you can feel this flow, and you could call, I guess, that's what you could call being awake, awakeness, of life, not of Dennis or of Sylvia. I don't know if Vince is, I think he will agree, but I just wanted to add
good.
my 5 cents.
Yeah. And look, I want
Thanks,
everybody to chime in, No, nobody, don't keep your thoughts to yourself. Bring them out there, because the more different perspectives we can bring to something, the better it is, the wider it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's just incredible. I'm working a little bit with my daughter these days. We were out walking this morning, and I would like have her do some exercises, like look at the landscape. We were on top of a mountain and we were looking at this landscape, and I was asking her questions like, what is it like? Does it have depth, or is it like in a postcard? And so where are you when you are viewing this? And she was amazing, because she said, I am in it. I mean, not really in it. I'm just it.
Mm.
And she would just get it, And then I did the same with hearing of the birds and of a plane that was passing by. And she would get it, totally. And then again, I did it even with the thinking. I said, look, can you think of, I gave some suggestion, and then she was thinking. And then I asked, and where are you? No, you. There's only thinking. She would get with every single sense, even with the thought, which is usually the most difficult. And then at the end of the various exercises, she would go, well, and now what about me? I said, no, it's just finished. It's finished. That was it. It's because people have an expectation, which is a big thing. And so the expectation, because people are talking about this awakening thing since thousands of years, and it's like it has built up and up and up and up and up. And so one is waiting for some big fire, what do you call those fireworks?
Yeah,
Fireworks.
crackers, yeah.
And so it's not coming, and so you go like, well, okay, and now it's finished.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had people do that, and then when they say, well, so what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when this is like starting to happen in your life, that you are just, drinking the tea and just this, the tea drinking, no, nothing else, not going like, oh, is it too hot? No, it's cold already. It's too strong. Just tea drinking, savoring it. This is the awakeness, Dennis. Don't expect the big thing.
Yeah, that resonates, Sylvia, because when you were talking at the start, like it felt like there, and this is the only way I could say it, there's moments of awakeness in life when there's the flow, and then there's back to Dennis and not awake. It's yeah.
That's the artificial part. Back to Dennis. That's the learned part, the one that the labels, the various things that the structure that you built around it. But that thing that you're calling flow, that is always there.
Yes.
You're just not noticing always. And then at some point you start noticing it. And when you start noticing it, that structure starts crumbling. Maybe usually not all by once, like in pieces.
Yeah, it does feel like Dennis is a cage. It's a structure. It's a container. it's a way of staying small, not being this.
Staying small and staying safe, usually also.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though it might not be very comfortable way of staying safe, maybe not the most pleasant way of staying safe, but it's your way of staying safe.
Yeah, it's the known. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia.
Mm.
And those moments when you are experiencing something that you might call a mini awakened moment, it's that thing about so what, right? What is really, really valuable in those is that those moments show you that there is no danger to be safe from. The danger is imagined, you know that, but
Yeah.
but the idea of staying safe has a pull, but there is no such thing as being safe. There's only the opposite, which is experiencing danger. So when that's absent, we might describe it as being safe. But those mini moments that you have show you there is no danger. That danger is imagined. It's made up.
Yeah, no, that resonates. It's because I remember a shift that happened after a retreat that was like I was in the flow. There was no sense of an I. There was just life living, happening. And it felt wonderful. But that didn't last. Obviously, I came back and the dentist and then I've been chasing that to one degree or another. So I'm just saying that because I know what you're pointing at, that way of being or living or life itself is fine without me. Yeah.
The
So,
I
yeah.
did not come back. The I, you imagined the I back because the I hasn't been there in the first place. You just imagined it. You started again imagining it. That movement of thought caught strength again and started imagining it. But it's not an I that comes back because it's not there.
I love this story. You're sitting in the audience watching a magician on stage saw a woman in half. Okay, and every part of your being can see a woman being sawn in half. But you don't call the police, you don't call the ambulance, you don't jump up and try and stop it. You accept that it is an illusion, right? And that that Dennis, is just as much an illusion. But there's a different level of acceptance about that being an illusion.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
So it'll feel like there's a Dennis there. It'll feel like there's an I there. That doesn't mean there is one. It's an illusion. You know that. You've looked for an I and haven't found one. You know it's not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our senses fool us. Our senses fool us all the time. Our senses create this idea of distance. You know, they create all sorts of things that are quite useful, but they're an illusion. They're not actual. When you look at something that and you can say, oh, that's 4 meters in front of me, it's an illusion. The experience of seeing happens in your brain. It's not out there in front of you. Your brain projects it out there, but it's an illusion. It's a useful illusion, but it's not actual. Your experience of distance is imagined, just as your experience of color is imagined. We're starting to push the envelope a little bit here because we do actually create something out of nothing. We create the world out of our imagination. And then we respond to it like
No,
it's real.
yeah, no, it's interesting because I was looking at the sixth. I'm going to call it the sixth fetter. You've just been pointing at it about. But as I was looking at, if I'm looking at an object and then I'm referring back to something here versus the object and where that is, or is that somewhere, and I haven't quite grokked it yet, but I was I was leaning more towards, it felt like that the seeing was out there, not in here in the brain, that you are the tree, seeing itself is a weird way of saying it. Because if it's just a picture in your brain, you're not actually seeing anything then.
Mm. Yeah, don't chase that one too much at this stage. We need to clean up a few other things before we get into that one comfortably. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's nice, I can feel an ease now. The more I recognize the sort of nowness of now and deepen into its nowness, I just notice in the distance the fears of future and problems and what might happen. They just go further and further away because the more now you are, the more they just disappear.
Yeah.
And if you were totally now in the now, deepened fully, they wouldn't be an issue ever
Mm.
now, and they're not.
Now is a little bit of a trick because we've kind of been brought up to think of now as the present, and it's sandwiched between the past and the future. But it's not. It's not a point in time. But I prefer this rather than
Yeah,
now as a way
yeah.
it. I mean, that still gives you an idea that it's something, but it's a little bit easier to get a hold of than now. Um, but it's very complete. It's just everything is this. Yeah. Now is very useful too, of course. It really comes into play when we leave the past behind. And I mean, it's really easy to see when we get off into the fantasy of the future. but leaving the past behind is not quite so easy sometimes. Yeah.
But it's funny, we have to pick it up to then leave it behind. It's funny.
Yeah.
Like I'm standing there in the driveway and I go, and you're there, and I pick up this heavy bag and bring it over to you and say, Vince, can you help me get this weight off? And yeah, that's what it feels like.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good analogy, that one. I like that. I say, but Dennis, don't pick it up. You don't need to bring it. Just leave it there. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what this isness, this nowness is. It's that. It says nothing, but it says that. There's no
Mm.
need to, it has you. When you fall back into it, it's very much, I don't know, the ground of being just keeps coming into my mind. It's very stable. But it's
Yeah.
not static.
Yeah. And it's encompassing and supportive and loving and embracing and intimate and just, yeah,
And you can
beautiful.
totally rest. You can totally rest here, total
Yeah.
rest, and be fully alive and aware and awake and operating in the world.
Mm. You've got it. Yeah. Oh. And when you've got it, trying to hang
I think
on
it's
to
got
it.
me.
Yeah, that's better. That's better. Yeah, because if you've got it and you try and hang on to it, you're going to lose it straight away. Yeah.
Mm.
If it's got you, you're wonderfully passive. You're helpless, and there it is, beautiful. It will do as it wants with you, but it will carry you and love you. Yeah. Mm.
Thanks, guys. I'll sit with this a bit.
Events. Vince, can you hear me?
Yep. Yep.
Um, there's a sensation of like heaviness in the chest. It takes up a lot of my attention. What do I do with it? Because today I've tried sitting with it and I've tried diving in. I question what is it, and I can't figure it out. But it's unpleasant. And then you talking about just letting it be there, give it space. Or can I do anything about it? So yeah, what do I do or not do?
Hmm. So you've tried a few things with it, eh? You've tried being with it. Did that seem to do anything for you?
No, it moves sometimes. No, nothing.
Okay. Yeah, go
When I go off into thought, I don't notice it, but then when I just like quieten down for a bit, it's
on.
like,
Yeah.
oh, there it is. It's still there.
Yeah, that's a bit of a trick, isn't it? Yeah, because thought seems to be a way out of it. Yeah. Hmm. So when you've sat with it, what technique are you using?
I'm just trying to feel it completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the hope of, I don't know, getting it to move, because that's what how
Right.
it did
Right.
before.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but no.
Okay. So when we do these things with an idea for an end result,
Mm.
we're doing it for a purpose. That's Feta 3 stuff, that's rites and rituals, looking to get an end result. That's doomed to failure. I mean, or at least not a good success. Sometimes we might be able to avoid things by doing things like that. And you could say, well, I just have to get into thought and it's not there. I don't feel it. Right? You presume that it's there, even though when you come back to it, you say, oh, it's still there.
Right.
But it may, in fact, not be there when you're in thoughts, and it may come back when your thoughts stop. Yeah, I don't know that that's the case, but that's a possibility, because when you're not aware of it, from your perspective, it's not there, is it?
Mm.
You just imagine that it is there when you quieten to the point where you feel it again and you go, oh, I wonder if that means that it was always there. Yeah. Now, the only reason I bring that up is because it's stories. We have stories. We say, oh, this means something. When you were attempting, when you were focused on being with it and getting close to it, were you aware of stories that were attached to it?
No, I couldn't pinpoint anything to do with it. No, I just try to keep on diving in, and
Yeah.
nothing.
So obviously there's a story there that says it shouldn't be there, or a variation of that story. Yeah. I presume that it's somewhat unpleasant. Maybe not intensely, but certainly it's not a pleasant sensation, eh?
No.
Otherwise, why would you want to get rid of it? Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine that maybe it's trying to tell you something, or rather that there is some message about it somewhere? What's the first thought that came when I asked that question?
Sadness.
Right. Okay. So it's a good technique, I reckon, to go with the very first thought that pops up, because often the following thoughts, we try to refute the first thought that comes up.
Mm.
And so I'll give some credibility to the one that jumps up spontaneously. And you could say, well, why that one and not another one? But, it often does. So, yeah, sadness. Well, it's in the right place for sadness, isn't it? It's, in the heart area.
Mm.
Yeah, chest area. Yeah. And a bit like what we were talking about with Dennis earlier, it's worth recognizing that something like that needs to be kept alive. If it's sadness that's, that it rests on, it would go by itself if we didn't keep it alive. So somewhere there is stories that keep it going. Now, we may not be aware of those stories, and they may not be conscious at all. They could be unconscious, or they could be sitting on the edge of consciousness. You know, we sometimes just get a fleeting idea of that. Sadness. It's often worth. I find it's often worth distinguishing between sadness and grief. Sometimes we get those two a bit muddled up together. And with sadness, it's pretty much a pure body sensation. Whereas grief is loaded up with stories about why things shouldn't be there, why things should be different. That's grief. And working through grief is coming to terms with those stories and accepting the inevitability of something. So when people take a while to work through grief, that's what's happening. They're just, yeah. So if it's just sadness, if it really is just sadness, it's quite reasonable that there are no stories there. But it could be grief, and the stories are not obvious. They're just buried too deeply or something. I would take something like that as a message, as a messenger. It's trying to tell me something. And I'm not concerned about what it's trying to tell me. I'm just happy that it's trying to tell me something. Okay, so with that, then I would approach it with a different attitude, and I certainly wouldn't be trying to get rid of it before I understand what it's trying to tell me. So I want to keep it until it tells me why it's there, what it's about. And so the idea of not getting rid of it is probably one of I imagine that's a big one. That's probably one of the strongest ones for you. Don't try and get rid of it. Try and be friends with it. Try and get intimate with it in a way that it will reveal what's going on for you. And when thoughts pop up, and so it's like intuition. Intuition will present itself to you via thoughts, but they're thoughts of a special kind. They're thoughts that have a kind of a flavour to them that gives them a legitimacy. But they're always ended with a question mark. They're never an absolute dead set certainty. They're always maybe this. I wonder if this, that kind of thing. Yeah. It's I suppose these are just words, you know. It's arrogant of us to think we know more than the body knows, or to think we know better than the body knows. The body doesn't lie, you know. The body will respond to what it imagines is going on, regardless. So it might give us false information, but it's based on truth as far as it's concerned. Whereas the mind lies all the time. The mind's like the Donald Trump inside all of us. It just says whatever, you know, for convenience sake. So the body, you know, I give the body a lot more legitimacy than I would give the mind as far as telling us things that are going on. So when you say sadness, if you, next time you go towards that sensation, if you just ask it, are you sad? Are you expressing sadness? Are you telling me something about sadness? And, you know, be really, you get my tone of voice, be really gentle with it, really friendly and tentative, and just kind of inquire what not looking for a story. Don't go racing off down rabbit holes with it. It's always simple. The body's going to tell you in one word what's going on every time. No complex story, just really straight. That's the way the body works. So I'd say it's useful, it's friendly, it's helpful, it's trying to look after you.
What's the next step? So if I do that and say, for example, just the first thought came to my loneliness came up.
Yeah.
And then what? Do I just be like, okay, can I be in a body that's 100% lonely? And then you just go that way? Is that the path?
Yeah, no, yeah. No, we see that's still trying to get rid of it, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of right, it's kind of legitimate, but at the same time, yeah. So
But wouldn't it be a good idea to stay with the bodily sensation? Because you have the story and you have the bodily sensation. And it's like two parallel things. And then you can detach the story and just make this bodily sensation move. You can notice where it is. Might be in your chest, it might be in your stomach, it might be in your throat. I don't know where it would be for you. You notice it, and then you notice that it moves around. It doesn't stay still, and you just get more and more used to staying with the bodily sensation, because creating the story is the diversion to not stay with the bodily sensation. You would not, because it's something that had happened a long time ago, and you want to avoid to stay with the bodily sensation because it's so uncomfortable. So you create a story not to stay with that bodily sensation.
Yeah, there's layers of story, and I don't think what John Lee's experiencing, at least in my head, it appears to me that he's not trying to avoid it, although he was trying to end it, but yeah. And so when he does stay with it, it starts off with sadness, and then it reveals itself as loneliness. This sounds like the present more so than the past to me. And then I would say as we get closer to this idea of loneliness, and how the body expresses that with sadness, right? Then we start to look at what this loneliness is. What is it that we want? So it becomes, Theta 4 and 5 stuff. It becomes desire and aversion. Are we yearning to be touched? Are we yearning to have intimate relations? What is it, that we, and so if it's that, what are the stories we're telling ourselves about the absence of that? Right? These are things we don't control. I mean, we don't control anything really, but very obviously, if we don't have an intimate partner at the moment, that's just the way it is. And at the moment, there's a great opportunity to experience life from that perspective. It will happen when it happens, or not. Yeah. So it's a case of acceptance again.
Yeah. But how does it make you feel to say, I'm a person, I feel lonely. I am a person who is lonely, or I'm a person who is sad.
Or there is loneliness there. There is this thing I call loneliness, this heavy feeling in the chest.
Yeah, I start to feel small and then loneliness goes back to sadness. So
Yeah, it's a bit of a closed loop, that one, isn't it? Yeah,
mm,
yeah. And it's also a statement about what is now is not satisfactory. I want something different. Yeah. And that doesn't imply that it should be different. If wanting something different is there, then that's what's there. To then add on top of that, oh, I don't want to feel this, that just corrupts the next thing, doesn't it? It's kind of, again, we get into a bit of a spiral or a downward spiral. Yeah. So we fully explore this wanting or this or whatever it is, whatever turns up. Yeah.
cool. Because now I've got substance to work with, as in like, my question before ages ago, like a week ago, I was talking about the Theta 4 and 5, and I was confused, and then Anna, the Scottish Russian lady, taught me to read the book, and then I read that chapter 4 and 5, and then I just stopped because I'm like, oh, that hasn't fallen away yet. I'll just stay, but I didn't have anything to like
Yeah.
to work with. But then now this pops up, I'm like, oh, cool. It's showing me I've got substance to work with now.
Right. And I say, like, it's a doing, but it's not. Don't get into this thing about if it's fallen yet or not.
Oh,
You know, if you say it's fallen, I say just wait. Yeah. Or what Ram Dass would say is, if you think it has, go visit your family. You'll find out very quickly that it hasn't. Yeah. So it's all just a great big adventure, isn't it? Yeah.
okay. I'm still striving a bit too hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you can't not do that, can you? How are you gonna stop doing that? That's just more striving, isn't it? Yeah. So where, yeah. Do you remember that koan about the bloke hanging from the tree by his teeth?
No.
Okay. It's a beauty. It's a great one. Yeah. So there's this bloke and he's right up a really, really high tree. He's 80 meters up in the air and he's hanging onto a branch by his teeth and his hands are tied behind him. So he can't do anything but hang on with his teeth. And tiredness is going to mean that sooner or later he's going to let it go and he's going to fall to his death. But he's hanging there and a Zen monk comes along underneath and says, say the one thing that will save your life. I'll leave you with that one for a week.
There's just silence here. It
Yeah.
broke my brain, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's the point of it, of course. But yeah. Yeah.
I was working through loneliness maybe like 2 weeks ago, and then this image came to mind that I've never seen before, and I've forgotten about, but the image came up of me being in the incubator, and then that applies to loneliness. I was like, huh.
Yeah, of
It
course.
starts that young.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I
Can
couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know where that went. I was like, is this resolved? I'm not sure. So probably not. Anyway.
But what, recognizing that it exists now,
Mm.
and that image existing, that collapses time, right? So it exists now, though we have a story that it may have started then.
Right.
It's very, very reasonable that a baby left in the incubator with nobody around except maybe other babies is going to feel absolutely isolated, even though they don't even know what they're feeling. They could not describe what they're feeling. The baby's just too young to have any intellectual, any conceptual idea about what's going on. They just know. And so if a mother or a nurse or somebody turns up and touches them, wow, there's an explosion of feeling that might happen in that point. So without that, once they've got that and then they haven't got that, then they may yearn for that as well. I mean, we can only speculate. We don't know how a baby really feels at that age. But yeah, but that was then, right? And although you may be experiencing, how can I put it, the result of that now, it is now, right? So that seeing that gives you the option, so to speak. It's not an option, but it gives you the possibility that you can drop it. You can just let it go. You can leave it back in the past where it is. It's right. So that there is that memory that was held in the body all those years that just got the light of investigation shone on it, and that can dissolve it. That can be enough for it to just completely go. On the other hand, it may require some deep shadow work, but it's not likely. I mean, it's possible, but you never know. So the way to find that out is to just watch it and see if it keeps coming back. Then chances are it does require something a bit more cathartic to work through. Yeah, but just seeing that image and experiencing that what you feel, that is a form of catharsis, and that is a way of letting go of stuff as well. It may be enough. Who knows? Yeah. It's pretty amazing the way the body works with that kind of thing. There, all of a sudden, your brain pops up an image from you how many years ago? Like, wow, cool. There it is. Yeah. And you haven't had, I mean, sometimes we might have these kind of things happen in a dream. They might come to us, but we kind of dissociate from them a little bit if that's the way they appear. We say, oh, yeah, that was just a dream, but it's usually based on something actual. Yeah.
The thing is kind of like, I thought I wasn't lonely.
Yeah.
Is it that much of a blind spot, or like I've been running away from it that I've convinced myself that I'm not?
Well, see, again, we're talking like it's a permanent state. That may not be.
Right.
These things come and go. It can be that, yeah, sure, you haven't been lonely, and then something triggers you to feel lonely. Right? You just might see somebody, or you might see a couple embracing on television, and that might just be the trigger for, yeah, that'd be really good. All of a sudden, who knows? It's like, yeah, it can be anything. And so it's wrong to say oh, I am lonely.
Mm.
Right? It's much more accurate to say, yeah, loneliness is there sometimes.
When you said just drop it, I was like, oh, okay, that's an option. The other thought that came was, yeah, of course, because loneliness is irrational.
Mm.
Like it's unreality, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an easy drop.
Well, you can't
But
drop it or not drop it.
Right.
Go on, Giddy.
if you decide to drop it, it's like bypassing, isn't it?
It can be, sure. If you say, oh, well, there's
Yeah.
no one here to feel loneliness, that's a good way to bypass it. Yeah.
You could say, I am lonely and I'm so much more. I'm also creative. I'm
Yeah.
also
Also, everything else. Yeah.
good at playing tennis. I'm also happy when I eat. I'm so much more
Mm.
than that. And that opens up your mind.
Yeah.
So it's not bypassing, it's just, it leaves
It,
you with a very
it,
good feeling.
it's widening the perspective. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I would put it in terms of that those things exist rather than I am
Yeah,
kind of
of
thing.
course.
But yeah, sure. But that's
So
just a
there's
technical bit of
also,
bullshit. Yeah.
yeah, you could say there is loneliness and there's also
Yeah.
happiness. There's
Mm.
also being creative and
Yeah. So if it's a real issue for you, I mean, when I say a real issue, I don't mean it like that at all, because I can't say anything that I don't immediately think it's crap what I say. But if it's a significant uh, something, whatever, it may bleed into other things. It may bleed into abandonment, as an example. So that baby in the crib could feel abandoned, not just lonely, but like I've been left, I'm being ignored. Although those generally would come later, they wouldn't come as a baby. But right, if you carry that loneliness through into a time when you did start to think and have stories, abandonment could be something that's there as well. But it may not be. So yeah, so it depends a lot on just how it's held, how significant it is. And when I say that you could drop it, it's not something you do again. It's just something that could happen. Yeah.
Cool. This feels like, yeah, we've shined a light on it. I can see it more clear, and that's what I wanted. It was just,
Mm.
yeah, thanks.
Right.
I must say that I don't trust my thoughts any longer. So if I was to look into something, some thoughts, and well, I have a question, an issue with worthiness. So if I was to go back and look into this worthiness all the time, then I have the feeling that if I seek my thoughts and how they're grounded, it's like my ego is triggering me to go in the direction of not knowing. Whereas if I just observe what happens and notice the bodily feeling, then I notice that something changes from what the memory is of what I was. I really do have the belief that my mind is triggering me all the time if I run with my thoughts.
Mm. Which suggests to me that you're observing your thoughts from the outside rather than being carried away by what they're saying, by their content.
I've always done that, being wounded up in my thoughts. So just observing is there's more like a flow to it. It gives a dynamic feeling that something changes in what happened in the outcome. And I have noticed a difference because I've spoken to you about doing wanted to do exercise, but being very angry when I started doing it, so I couldn't do it. And I found out that if I let go of I want to do, it's like putting on a label. I want to be this person that does exercise because I want to stay well when I'm old. So I've changed it, and I just try to notice what the body wants to do now, and then it does a little bit. And then it might not be what my mind wanted to do, but it's like recognizing that the body is very happy of this observing this, being, acknowledging just the now instead of making up in my mind what should be or what not should be. It's very it's like a growing need for the body's possibility to exist as it should be, as it should, on its own terms, not my mind deciding it. So I had this experience about doing exercise, and I did have the other one with staying in a body and having a story attached to it, and just staying with the body. The story fell, and then another one came up. And that's definitely different from what it used to be, because
mm,
I was just stuck with the same story.
mm.
Why? Because I didn't want to feel that feeling, what the story was showing me.
Yep, yep.
And it can be very, in the beginning, I always used to say that, I always say that when you stay with the feeling, it's like, and sorry for the comparison, being in a tsunami, which is, you just feel like being thrown apart, completely devastating. And then the next time it's a little easier. And there's another story attached to it. But that's the only way, where it's the first time that a new story has been able to come out.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that I don't trust my thoughts.
Yeah.
To lead the way, to show me the way.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that sounds pretty good to me. Yeah. Yeah. They really, they follow rather than lead. You know, if we treat them as leaders, we're going to get into trouble. But if we treat them as followers, which they actually are, they always follow other experience. They never lead it. Yeah.
Because it's like, if I have the subtitle, I'm unworthy, then all the thoughts that I get attached to are just pointing out that I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
So I can just give space to, there's unworthiness, but there's also a lot of other things.
Everything
and
else.
I just play with the thought of being someone else for the day, and see what happens with another story. And that's it is as if the body just get the knowledge on a on a cellular level,
yeah.
That nothing is real. You can't trust anything. You just go with the flow, and that's okay. But it really does open your mind to be all the things that you already are, instead of just focusing on being on the unworthiness.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the biggest value that thoughts have is like Netflix. They're just entertainment value. If we take them seriously, we'll get into trouble.
Yeah, actually, Vince, I think it was like 2 weeks ago that you asked me, how would you feel if you were never to have a partner again or something? And I think I replied, oh, I don't want to imagine that, or I would not be able to accept that. So I thought maybe I should sit with it and play a bit with it. But when I tried to, it was so obvious that I can't accept or not accept it, because it's just a story as well. Because this would mean, like, within this fantasy, I would have to freeze like all the time until my death, and look at it just like one piece, or it would be like a big amount of time in which this theme, you will never get to know anybody again, would be so dominant that there is no place for any other things. So it just didn't really work. And then I tried to find some sentence or some negative affirmation that would trigger something in me. And then I tried out, for example, I remember that I don't know, maybe a few months ago, I remember I started to cry in a Zoom meeting, and I think it was about feeling lonely as well. But then I kind of understood that this idea of being in a relationship or not in a relationship doesn't really have to do anything with this feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Because also I remember that in my last relationship, I felt so lonely being together with this person, and it was even more icky than feeling this loneliness when I was
By
alone.
yourself. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
on the other hand, which is also clear, is that what does this label lonely mean? And then, I mean, there could be other sub-labels for everybody else. It could be like, for
Absolutely.
example,
Yeah.
my
It's huge.
ex-boyfriend,
Yeah.
like I didn't feel seen, I didn't feel understood, for example. Then I
Mm-hmm.
also tried those negative affirmations like nobody understands me, nobody sees me or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't I didn't have any reaction, which was kind of surprising because some months ago it would still have had
Yeah.
a reaction. And then the one that worked for me was like, I'm not okay as I am. I'm not okay the way I am. That was like the one that would not really
Yes.
give me a strong reaction, but still I could feel this reaction.
Yeah. Some juice there. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, but the interesting thing is that I seem it's still difficult for me to just be without the label and only with the physical sensation. And I noticed that when I'm able to do it, it's because in general, I feel more calm. And for example, the last weeks, I was working a lot again. Actually, I had reduced my working hours, but then like a colleague is on holidays. So I feel that it's really too much work for me. It's like I can't shut the computer down and then I don't sleep very well because my brain or like my mind is still active. And that's actually a condition which is not favorable for me to explore physical
Yeah.
sensations, for example. So I think there are also some conditions that have to be met or needs that have to be met in order to have the tranquility to be able to look into it. And also last week I was very exhausted from working. And then on Friday, I went to my cello class, which is kind of, yeah, it's always like a nice start into the weekend. And I relax a lot because I'm playing music. But then sometimes before starting to play, I have a talk with my cello teacher. I really like her a lot. But that day, she said something which was like really racist. I mean, and yeah, it was kind of a very racist commentary. And then I could observe that there was like a lot of, yeah, I started to be in a bad mood and react to this and start to discuss with her. And while I was doing that, I could observe like, and yeah, the thing is that you are exhausted, you are tired, and now this is frustrating.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it's a bit more difficult to create that space and not react to it directly.
Oh
But
yeah, for sure.
there
If we're
was
tired,
there
they
was,
come up a lot easier.
there was really no control. And
Mm.
then at some point, we would not really find any how do you say point in our opinions where we would meet. And then at some point I said, shall we just um, play the piece that we were practicing? And then it was like a good way to get out of this
Yeah.
discussion
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
I could see that she yeah, that she wanted to end this lesson in harmony. So she also said like, yeah, maybe I expressed myself in a harsh way or something, but still, I mean, when I went back, there were stories coming up like, yeah, and that's actually an activity that I like in my spare time. And then even this is not like the nice bubble where I'm free of those racist commentaries,
Mm,
because
mm.
yeah, at work and in other places, I also listen to those things, but then I could really see into it. And I mean, that's the story as well, because I don't really know what reasons she has. But then I thought, like, if I mean, I'm just rather sorry for her that she has this kind of very negative
Mm.
emotion towards people, that she makes a difference between people from Syria or from Germany or from Ukraine. And I don't think that this will do her good. So I felt
Yeah,
rather a
that's a
bit.
that's a tricky one though. That is, and yeah, something I experience here too. Or I'm surrounded by people that are racist or
Hmm,
whatever, homophobic. That's another one. They're there, and yet they're nice people, even
hmm,
though they've got these really stupid ideas about
yeah,
things. What I call stupid ideas. Um, And yeah. Look, we went. My wife and I went out for tea last night with a group that we go out with frequently on a Friday night,
hmm,
and they're all very right wing. And my
hmm,
wife and I are pretty left wing in our
hmm,
views on life, and we're listening to them go on about this and that and something else. And on the way home, we went, we can we didn't have to say anything. We weren't didn't
hmm,
get buy into it, and there was no argument. We just
yeah,
accepted that that's what the way they were, and it's a bit of a mystery, like. And if yeah, I can feel a little sad about the fact that they're that way,
hmm,
but not much. Not that
yeah,
I don't feel the opposite, but I just go, well, I accept that that's the way they are, and it's not my job to change them.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It made me a bit sad. That's yeah,
yeah.
that's
It's a
but
bit of a trick, yeah. But something else
then
you bring up is really, really important. The world is full of people who are
hmm,
in a relationship, who have lots and lots of friends, and yet they
hmm,
feel lonely.
hmm,
Right? It has nothing to do with who they're
hmm,
around or what that is. It's
hmm.
yeah, it's something else altogether. Interesting. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but I could really see that there was even like this story. Maybe I will look for a new cello teacher and not such a racist
Yeah.
one.
That stuff comes up here, and it's a bit
And then,
amusing when it does, doesn't it?
and then I
Yeah.
thought, but this would mean to put like even more division and negative feelings on top of the
Yes.
negative feelings
Yeah.
and division that she's already having. So,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
and
And
that
and
won't help anything anyway.
yeah.
I mean,
So you end up with no shallow teacher because they're all racist or something, who knows what it is.
mm,
But the best chance for her to change is to
mm.
experience somebody like yourself who isn't that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I also think like because yeah, it was the same situation with my colleagues, and but we don't have anything for vegans or something like that. So
Yes.
I
Yeah,
was
exactly. Yeah.
I didn't find my reaction that, I don't know. I could have just not reacted. But it was like this, and at least I didn't really feel guilty or anything
Yeah.
afterwards. And
Great.
I
Yeah.
also thought like, who knows? I mean, I could um I could see that my cello teacher like afterwards tried to um say like, yeah, I'm not such a bad person. I'm not that full of hate as you might think, or something like that.
Yes. Yep. Gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, the expression that she was using was like, yeah, and those people don't know how to behave on the street. And sometimes I think I would like to put them in a boat and send them all back or something. And, you know, this also triggers in me, like with this historical past in Germany, like this
Yes,
deportation.
yes, yeah.
And so on. Of course, she is from Ukraine. She's not German, so maybe she might not have this super sensitive thing about saying this kind of things. But yeah, whatever. But yeah, maybe it's also not the worst thing for her to have an irritated reaction from somebody. So
Sure, yeah,
she,
yeah. She considered it because of that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I just keep saying it takes all kinds. Yeah,
mm,
every variation possible exists. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she can still be a very nice person in spite of having those things. Yeah, those
yeah.
attitudes. Yeah.
In the meantime, I mean, yesterday we had another class, and then it was like very nice also, and I didn't really carry all the heavy stuff from the last lesson into the next
Yeah,
one. So
good. Yeah. Uh, and the fact that you see your own reactions, the biggest positive thing for me, you know, that you have a reaction and you see it. You're not lost
mm,
in it, you see it. So that's great. Yeah, that gives it the best opportunity to change if there's value in changing. Yeah.
yeah, but last week, for example, there was a part of the Leonard who was like, "No, but I'm right," you know.
Yeah. But you saw
And
it again. You saw it happening, didn't you?
yeah, yeah, I revisited this
Yeah.
somehow, and then I felt like, yeah, come on, but it's like no, nobody's right. I mean,
Mm,
I'm also limited in my perspective onto the world, so
yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Sometimes I think nobody's right, but I'm just a little bit righter.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah.
no, I remember in the other group somebody was using the word unwholesome, and I
What's
mean
the word?
unwholesome. I mean,
Okay.
I would not say that I'm right and my teacher's wrong, but I can see on her side that there is a certain, yeah, I don't want to say hatred, but like a negative emotion towards people she labels in a certain way.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
I find that some, I mean, this is not,
Who knows what her experience has been that led to that? It may have just been the way she was brought up. Her parents may have whatever, or it may be that she had some experience with some people on the street, right?
hmm,
Where racism and sexism and all of the isms come from is when we generalize it to a whole race or a whole section or a group or whatever. If we generalize, you know,
hmm,
and what I tend to see is the individual rather than the thing. So all of these people that we go out with for tea who have distinctly right wing ideas, uh, I see them as individuals who've been conditioned by something, you know, so I forgive them for that because they don't even know it exists. They just think that that's right, you know. So it's not a case of, yeah. But
yeah, I think,
I do like Sylvia. I do think, you know, they got weird ideas about how the world works, you know, and my ideas are right, but theirs are not.
yeah, it's interesting because I grew up thinking that national identity is nothing important, because I mean, when I was a child, it was not, I mean, Germans are not so openly patriotic, or maybe now, yes, a bit more, but not back then. But the strange thing is that now, I mean, after having lived in Argentina, for example, where there is also division and like the society is highly polarized, and there are also like awful things going on socially and politically. And I could also like see it and have a reaction, but not in the same way as in Germany, because that's like the country I grew up in. And so there is like more of an identification with the history, with, yeah, it's like all the upbringing, what you learn at school. It's not so easy to just say, yeah, but that's just identification, but it is. I mean,
for sure, yeah. And the German situation is really interesting, isn't it? Because they still have guilt and shame about what happened during the war. Yeah, but they're at it, so they've kind of got almost got an anti-identification.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was like German comedian who did like a pop song about the Germans, and it played a bit with the German cliches, and I think it said at some point, "We are proud of not being proud." So
Yeah, yeah,
like
interesting.
identifying with not identifying, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of what people call patriotism is nationalism, which is identification, big time. With a story, of course, identifying with the story, yeah, in the same
yeah,
way.
it's like I spent 5 years abroad, and things changed not only in Germany but in the rest of Europe as well, and it's all a bit more populist, right wing now.
Yes, yeah.
Let's say it's more socially accepted than before, and I kind of missed this process a bit. So I came back to Germany, and sometimes it's like a shock for me still. And then I I find myself thinking again, like, oh, it was so nice to be a foreigner, like a tourist who is just like visiting more or less, but is not so identified with what is happening in the country. So,
Mm.
but I also, yeah, that's like one of my flight mechanisms as well, that I in the past I tended to change places always, and whenever there is this icky feeling over a longer period, then it comes back. So I found myself like in the last weeks again with this, or maybe I should move to Portugal or something like that. So,
Yeah,
and then I
yeah,
thought like, yeah, I mean, I might do that, but not under the condition that I will think that things are going to be better there,
yeah,
So
yeah. Wherever you go, there you are. Mm, mm. That's a nice bit of carving behind your rum is. Mm.
That's my old parents' bed. It's as old as me.
Say that again. I
It's
missed
as
that, but
old as me.
yeah. Oh well, it's still pretty young then, isn't it? Mm. Mm. So how have you been? I haven't heard from you for a while.
It's a mess.
Mm.
Feel like I'm being cocked.
You're being what?
Being cocked. Mm. A lot of shaking, a lot of crying, a lot of energy in the body. Mm. Specifically in the face and in the head. Like the energy keeps building up, and then I cry and shake, it builds up, and so on. Like cycle.
Mm. You must be exhausted by now. It's been going on for a long time, hasn't it?
Yes.
Can you imagine that it will ever end?
I assume that it must end, but it doesn't feel like it will.
Mm. Mm. Do you have moments when it's not there?
No.
No. Not even when you're asleep? Does it feel like it's always even there when you're asleep?
In the dreams, I don't think so. No.
Mm. When you wake up of a morning, does it appear to turn up then, or is it already there when you wake up?
It's already there.
Mm.
I feel like my sleep is kind of shallow, like sleep and not sleep at the same time.
Mm. Mm. Is your health generally good, or do you consider yourself sick at times, unwell?
No, I'm good.
Your health is generally good otherwise, yeah?
Yeah.
So this might sound like a stupid question. Does it feel okay that that is there?
Sometimes.
Lynn?
Yeah.
I'm
So
curious
those,
about
yeah, go on.
past year, the tension was in my throat area, and it was very intense and it was very uncomfortable, and I felt like I'm being suffocated. And I felt like I'm in a struggle to with the sensation.
It's here.
But for some reason, the past few months, the energy is like moved to my head and the head area. I'm just curious, like why this sudden shift. Right now, it doesn't feel as painful or uncomfortable like my throat area, and sometimes even it feels pleasurable or this pressure. It feels like I'm Superman, like I'm gonna shoot lasers from my eyes if I build enough energy. Does that mean anything? Like, will I shoot laser from my eyes?
I have no idea. But that feels like, yeah, sure.
Sorry, Vince, I was just going to mention something to Ram is the retreat I was on, or I am on. One of the guys there, Kogan, he's a kind of a Zen Buddhist monk, but he talked about something quite similar. For a long time, he suffered with this sort of energy rising to the head, headaches for months, pain, just energy. And it seems to be kind of like it can happen that way. It can last a period, but ultimately it doesn't last forever. And the other thing that comes to mind is some sort of practice, somatic, energetic practice to try and help relieve it. TRE comes to mind. I don't know if you've ever heard of trauma release exercise. It's a shaking you can do. It's on YouTube, or other practices to try and ground that energy. Jishanti would have talked about that too, and even walking barefoot, Tai Chi, just different practices to try and help ground and bring the energy down. That's working its way up. So I just said I'd mention that to you.
Yeah, I do TRE like almost every day, and it's like I don't even try to do it. It's just the body. I lie down and the body shakes by itself. Like even right now, I feel like my body is shaking.
Yeah, I rather imagine this is almost intuitive. This is like animals do. Animals will often get us startled and then they'll shake. You see a geese do it. You see a dog do it. You see they'll shake, as a way of getting rid of stress and so on. So maybe it's just an intuitive thing that your body does to relieve that. Yeah.
But I don't feel enough effect. I don't feel like it's causing any relief. But I have to shake. Like I don't know.
Yeah, just to not have something else happen. The shaking is just maintaining something, maybe. Yeah. Do you rock at all? Rock back and forward? I've seen people do that to relieve. The shaking might start, but they rock, and that will relieve it. But it's it comes to me that, you know, we don't want to get rid of it until we get the message that it's giving us. You know, it's our friend. It's looking after us, even though it's not pleasant. It's still something that's happening. How's your grandmother?
She's still the same.
Yeah. I imagine that's quite stress-inducing for you.
I find myself sometimes praying, and it feels good. It doesn't mean anything really.
It's an expression, isn't it? You're expressing something that you feel. Yeah. Tell me what the flavor of the eye thing, shooting lasers from your eyes, is that, does that feel like, well, I don't know quite how to put it. How does that feel? Does it feel like it's, what does it feel like it wants to do? That's probably the best way to put it that I can think of.
Destroy.
It wants to destroy. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So would you characterize that as an expression of anger or rage, even
Rage.
something more intense than anger?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you could direct that anywhere at anything or anybody, what's the first thing that comes to mind that you would direct it at?
The planet there.
The planet. Yeah, okay. And what's the first thing that comes to mind when I ask you why? What is there about the planet that you would destroy?
Useless suffering.
Suffering, yeah. Hmm. So does it feel like that it's the planet that is inflicting suffering on people?
No,
It's just inherent in the existence of the planet and people?
it's like I don't want any space for the suffering.
So it's like a causeless suffering. It's just there. It just exists. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like it's like an experiment gone wrong.
Mm-hmm. And is it the people on the planet or the planet itself? Or both? Or neither?
It's just the condition of existing on this planet.
Conditioning, you say?
The condition of existing. It's
Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So, yeah.
it's a survival game.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And it's pointless.
Yes, well, it is, isn't it? It has no meaning. But you said very widespread. It's everybody apparently. Do you see any pockets where there is no suffering, or is it everywhere?
Maybe if you are busy enough, not thinking about it, not seeing
Mm-hmm.
what's going on,
Mm.
or if one is deluding himself about what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, just bypassing it. Yeah. So it's not like there's no suffering there. It's just like there's no awareness of suffering because of busyness. So if you were to mm, if you were to find yourself at some point not suffering, you would be the only person not suffering. You would have to feel pretty guilty about that, wouldn't you?
I was thinking about that, and I haven't really thought about. I remember one of the meetings, Andrea was talking about feeling guilty about feeling happy, and I'm not sure how to know.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's a fantasy, isn't it? It's a speculation. We don't know. Yeah.
How to know if I'm holding that belief, because it's not clear for me.
Mm. So would it be accurate to say that you hold both views, that you imagine that maybe one day you won't be suffering, but at the same time you imagine that it's not possible to be not suffering?
I can't imagine not suffering.
Mm. So you've suffered as long as you can remember. You've always suffered.
Mostly, yeah. But it's not just me. Like the story of my grandma, for example. She's it's a tragic story,
Mm. It is, yeah.
and I can't imagine being in her place.
So your suffering is so much less than her suffering.
I imagine it's more difficult.
Mm. I take it that it's easy to imagine that she will never be without suffering until she dies.
No, I can imagine she's happy.
Say that again. You can imagine that she'll be happy?
Yeah,
Oh, great.
she used to read in the Bible close to the window. Um, and when I go to her and she looks at me smiling, it's so beautiful.
Mm.
How she looks.
At that moment, you don't suffer, eh? When she smiles at you, you see she's not suffering and you don't suffer. I imagine you don't suffer when as you, yeah. For a moment when you had that memory, when you said that, I saw you smile and I thought you weren't suffering for all of 3 seconds. So what comes to mind when I tell you that I can't actually remember the last time I suffered?
My response is, so what?
I didn't quite get that, sorry.
So what?
So what? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mm. I wasn't really meaning to talk about me as much as to say, well, there is a little pocket here where you don't need to send your laser eyes.
Don't worry, I won't.
Mm, mm. I would love to be able to take away your suffering, but then the thought arrives, who am I to do that? It would be, I don't know, arrogant of me to do that. I might deprive you of something really important if I was able to do that. But yeah.
I don't feel like my suffering is mine.
Okay. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, it's not personal. Hmm.
And I don't feel like I'm trying to change it also.
Hmm. So you get very close to saying it's not suffering. It's something else. Oh, is it, is that too big a stretch?
What do you mean?
I keep thinking you may be a true bodhisattva, and you know it's the I say suffering, but maybe we need to change that word a little bit. But it's like it's the troubles of the world. They're not your troubles, but you have taken them on somehow. The troubles of the world. That's just a thought. I don't know how accurate it is. But yeah.
It reminds me of something Jashanti said once. What you're saying, that you can have an opening at the front where you feel the troubles of the world, the pain of the world, and it's way too much to contain. And he talked about imagining a hole at your back where this stuff can flow through you, but not be contained within you, so that it's something you experience, but not something you hold, that it's impossible to hold. This pain of the world. You can tap into the collective.
Hmm.
If
And if you imagine
there's
it moving
something,
through,
I feel like the most painful part is when I'm trying not to feel it. There is resistance.
Hmm. So I asked you before if it felt okay, and you said sometimes. What about this? Does it feel right?
Do you mean the feeling or
That you are feeling them more than them themselves.
I don't have a judgment about me feeling.
Right. Okay.
I have
So
a judgment about that the condition that allow me to feel them
mm,
exist.
that's also impersonal, is it?
It's not when people speak about their acceptance of suffering. For me, it sounds kind of disingenuous.
Hmm.
Like, I understand when I feel when I'm crying, for example, it feels good. But if there's a world where I don't have to cry, then I'm not gonna hold into the crying to get high on it.
Hmm. It does sound to me like you have a great acceptance of what's there. Does it feel like that for you?
No.
Hmm. That wouldn't mean that um, it wouldn't mean that it's good. It just means that there would be no resistance to it, no fighting. Does it feel like there's resistance to it?
Sometimes, yes.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes it feels okay. Sometimes there's so it fluctuates, it changes.
The the feeling of the energy is building is the uncomfortable part. It's so uh,
Intense.
yes, it feels intense. It feels but when it's too much and it's it's been expressed in crying, it feels good.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that the crying relieves it or just expresses it?
I would say slightly relief.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, I don't feel I'm fighting anymore. It's like I'm allowing the
Yes.
feeling.
Okay. Yep. Mm.
Ramis, can I ask you a question? Do you feel like your attention gets like pulled in by the suffering a lot, or by the observation of the suffering? It's like your attention gets absorbed by this. Is it like this?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
Do you pay attention to your suffering a lot? Do you observe it? Do you watch it?
Do you mean the narrative or the tension in the body?
Both. Even your grandmother's suffering. To the narrative, to the feelings, to all what is involved in the suffering. Do you watch it a lot?
Yes.
I'm asking you because that's what I used to do. And do you know that attention is a form of energy?
It feels like it.
It is, because when you imagine you have a little baby and you're giving attention to the baby, you're giving the baby energy, aren't you? So in my opinion, that's just what I think. My opinion is attention is a form of energy. So by giving it a lot of attention, I mean, that's what I came to ask myself one day after many years of suffering, very, very deep existential suffering. I started to realize that I was giving this whole subject of suffering a lot of attention. And I started to think I might be feeding it with my attention. I might be perpetuating it through my attention. It's just a question, it's a question I asked myself, and it's a question I asked to you because I can feel you.
I don't know. You made me notice that like the reaction is coming is like I have to pay attention to the suffering. It's like if I'm not paying attention, it's like it's who will pay attention, or it's like my duty to pay attention to the suffering.
And do you notice that this is a belief?
Yes.
Not necessarily true.
Yes.
Because my point of view, my take on this is that there can be, for example, a strong feeling in the body. Like I used to have it here, and then here, and then here. A strong energy, and then here. And really very strong. It used to drive me crazy almost. In addition to that, there was the suffering of the world, the suffering of my daughter, etc., etc., etc. So when you have a strong feeling in the body, it might be because that feeling wasn't fully lived. During maybe your childhood, something happened and you encapsulated that feeling somehow in the body. So that feeling needs space, and it's okay to notice it, to give it space, to let it grow, etc., etc. But when it becomes a compulsion, to stay with it, like I personally, I wanted to penetrate that feeling, like this feeling. And I was like, I was imagining to penetrate the feeling, like I wanted to get to the bottom of it, to the very bottom of it. I sincerely thought this was the way to do it. And this was my duty to get to the bottom of it, until it became so absurdly unbearable that one day I started, my perspective started to shift due to unbearability. And I said, well, but my attention is going to the suffering all the time, 1,000 times a day. Sometimes it feels almost constantly there. You know, I became unable to work. And I was like focusing and thinking that this was the way out, because, you know, I had heard people saying the only way out is through, and all these things, which can be true in certain cases, in certain conditions. But in my case, it was just like, you know, almost, I don't know if I can say a compulsion, but I just knew that my attention was there all the time. And then that was the beginning of my awakening. And then one day I said, okay, just let's imagine that this suffering will be there until my very last day. Let's hope I don't live until 100. Let's hope I don't live a very long time, because I don't know if I can make it. That was my way of thinking. But let's imagine it will be there for 10 more years, for example. Okay, I will accept it. I won't throw myself out of the window. So I have nothing left but accept it. So when I was confronted with this thing, I had to accept it, whether my attention went straight there or not. So I started to say, okay, I have to accept it, but how can I cope? Let's see, what do I do with my attention if it doesn't go there? Or more interesting even, where does this attention come from? I mean, when it doesn't go on the suffering, it can go on a film, on TV. Okay, that was maybe a little bit of a break during the film, but it was just a distraction. So I could not go on distracting and fooling myself. So what did I do? For me, I did have no context for this. I didn't know about awakening. I didn't know about Buddhism or fetters. I didn't know about fetters until a month ago, actually. I didn't know about non-duality. I didn't know about these things. I just figured this exercise, I told it the very first time I was in these meetings. I just invented this exercise of following attention back to where it appeared to come from. I didn't even know exactly. I wanted to go and see what is it like there, where it is born somehow. The source of attention. What is it like there? Let's go and see. So I stopped giving attention to my suffering, because I started doing this exercise of following attention backwards. And after a few days of doing this exercise, I was just like, wow. And this was this big shift for me. It was a big shift because it went from one extreme to the other. And there was just bliss and days and days of bliss. And, and I realized that with this fixation that I had of watching the suffering and struggling my way through it. And I had also these beliefs coming from my family that you have to face things, not hide, so you have to be strong and face them directly. So this was all my conditioning. And I realized that by these attitudes, I was actually feeding the suffering, not only my own suffering in general, because suffering is not personal. It is felt now by your body, but it's not personal. But you can contribute to create more if you feed it every day. That's what I was doing. I created a lot more for me, for people around me, and for the world, So you're not obliged. I do feel suffering sometimes, I do feel like the world's suffering. There are these waves that come, but I hope, maybe sometimes I fall into the trap, but in general, I don't feel I am feeding it anymore. So I don't know if that speaks to you. It's just, it's my experience. It's not, everybody has his own experience, but it just sounded, when you were speaking, it sounded like, I know this, I know this way of being, of speaking. It just, I recognized something of the way I used to be. By the way, I used to have a lot of shaking, just my body started shaking. It was like at the base of the spine, I started like shaking like this. Even in the middle of the night, I would wake up by the shaking. It was just doing itself. It was not unpleasant. It would go on for maybe an hour. I wasn't able to sleep. It was a bit tiring. But I cannot say it was unpleasant. And it happened in many occasions. Some kind of music, some kind of drumming would just increase that shaking. I remember it was 2012. When I regularly every night used to wake up with my body shaking. And then after an hour or so, 1.5 hours, I would just be so tired and go back to sleep. I was not worried. I didn't tell anybody because I thought they are going to take me to the psychiatric hospital maybe if I tell somebody, I just, kept quiet. And this was 2012. Let me calculate that this awakening, this big shift here took place 8 years ago. So it was 2016. So that shaking went on for about four years. When awakening happened, it stopped. It totally stopped. Now, sometimes when I hear especially drumming, it can happen a little bit, and it's very pleasant. It's like it goes up here, it goes up from the spine, from below, from the base of the spine. It's like a little vibration, I feel, I'm not worried or anything. It's just pleasant, and I let it be, and it only happens rarely from time to time. Yeah, just wanted to share with you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was
And yes,
beautiful.
that does speak to me.
Yes. That was great. Thank you, Sylvia. Okay, well, it's just after midnight here, and I'm sorry, Irene, we haven't got round to you. I do have to go to bed.
No worries. It's been
I've got to get
wonderful.
up in 4.5 hours, so.
Oh, wow.
But it's been, it's been great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you,
you,
everyone.
Thanks to everybody. I might not, maybe next time is on Wednesday, isn't it? There is one on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, there's one on Wednesday. That's my Wednesday.
Your Wednesday.
Yeah, my Wednesday, and one on my Monday as well. Monday morning, my time.
So I don't remember. I might be able to take part once during the week, and then I go on holiday and I won't have internet. So
Okay.
just in case,
yeah.
I say goodbye, just in case I can't
Okay.
make it next.
Yeah. You've
Thank
been
you.
great.
Thank
I'm
you
so
everyone.
pleased you were here. Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Bye.
A lot.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.